June 11th, 1962. Three prisoners disappeared from the most secure prison in America. No gunshots, no alarms, no witnesses. By sunrise, the men were gone. More than 60 years later, nobody knows what really happened to them, or did they pull off the greatest prison escape in American history. This is the story of the men who vanished from Alcatraz. Alcatraz was supposed to be impossible to escape. Built on a rocky island in the middle of San Francisco Bay, the prison was surrounded by freezing water, powerful currents, and constant surveillance. The prison held some of America's most dangerous criminals, men who had escaped from other prisons, men who had attacked guards, men who authorities believed could never be trusted anywhere else. Life inside Alcatraz was brutal. Prisoners spent most of their days inside small cells. Every movement was monitored. Every privilege had to be earned. The message was clear: you were not leaving the rock. At least, that was the theory. Then one inmate arrived who saw things differently. His name was Frank Morris, and he was already looking for a way out. Frank Morris was no ordinary prisoner. He had spent much of his life behind bars. He had attempted multiple escapes before. Authorities considered him highly intelligent, patient, and extremely resourceful. Unlike many inmates, Morris relied on planning rather than force. Soon after arriving at Alcatraz, he noticed something important. The prison was old. Years of moisture had weakened parts of the concrete structure. Tiny flaws existed within the walls. Most prisoners ignored them. Frank Morris did not. He believed those flaws could become a path to freedom.
It has to be tonight. The ventilation shaft is our only way out. Are you sure about the guard rotation? We do this, we're all in. We stick to the plan.
Night after night, while guards made their rounds, the men secretly worked behind the walls of their cells. Using stolen spoons, homemade tools, and incredible patience, they slowly chipped away at the concrete. Progress was painfully slow. Some nights they removed only a few small pieces, but over the course of several months, the holes became large enough to crawl through. Behind the cells was a hidden service corridor, a place rarely inspected by prison staff. It became their secret workshop. There, the men worked on their next challenge. If they escaped the prison building, they would still have to cross the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. To solve that problem, they created a raft. Using more than 50 stolen raincoats, they stitched together a makeshift inflatable boat and life vests.
Day after day, through the long weeks of May and into June, their meticulous work continued.
But they faced another problem. What if the guards checked their cells during the night? The solution was almost unbelievable. The prisoners created fake heads. Using soap, paper, paint, and real human hair collected from the prison barbershop, they built realistic dummy heads and placed them on their pillows. In the darkness, they looked convincing enough to fool the guards. The plan was ready. Months of preparation had led to a single night. June 11th, 1962. Lights out. The prison fell silent. One by one, the men slipped through the holes behind their cells. The dummy heads remained in their beds. To any passing guard, everything appeared normal. The prisoners moved through the service corridor and climbed upward through the prison structure. Eventually, they reached the roof. Above them was the night sky. Below them waited the cold waters of the bay. They climbed down from the building and made their way toward the shoreline. There, they inflated their makeshift raft. No cameras recorded what happened next. No witnesses saw them leave. At some point during the darkness, Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin disappeared into the night and into history. The next morning, prison guards began their routine inspections. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then a guard approached one of the beds. The prisoner wasn't moving. He reached out and touched the head. It rolled off the pillow. The head was fake. Within minutes, alarms echoed across Alcatraz. The prison went into lockdown. Search teams flooded the island. Boats scanned the bay. Helicopters searched from above. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in its history. But investigators faced one major problem. The prisoners were gone. No raft was found. No confirmed trace of the men existed. Most importantly, no bodies were ever recovered. As the years passed, the mystery only grew. Some family members claimed they received secret messages. Others reported possible sightings. Rumors spread that the escapees had successfully reached land and started new lives under different identities. Then came one of the most controversial pieces of evidence, a photograph reportedly taken in Brazil decades later. Some believed it showed the Anglin brothers alive and well. If true, it would completely change the story. Supporters of the survival theory point to one fact above all others. No bodies were ever found, not one.
What the historical accounts often fail to mention are the freezing temperatures and the sheer violence of the currents that night.
The currents are unpredictable. Even strong swimmers can struggle in those conditions.
The official conclusion stands. Men likely entered the water and drowned.
Yet, despite decades of investigation, nobody has been able to prove it, and that is why the mystery survives. More than 60 years have passed since 3 prisoners disappeared from Alcatraz. The prison eventually closed, the investigation ended, but the question remains. Did Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers die in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay, or did they achieve the impossible and escape forever? The truth may never be known, because on one cold night in June 1962, 3 men stepped into the darkness and were never seen again. Perhaps they died, perhaps they survived. Either way, they accomplished something nobody thought possible. They vanished from Alcatraz.